They're two different circuits in the brain. That's what's going on. They're two different neural pathways, in my opinion. So one is, here's the archetype of an engineer, and here's the archetype of a business person, to make it really simple. Now, they're two different pathways, and we're going to talk about something a little bit later that I've called absorption latency. It all boils down to the fact that if you leave an engineer or anybody really who studied and lived and breathed and quite frankly pissed the world of engineering for any amount of time, if you leave them to do naturally what they'll do, they'll revert to type, which means they'll revert to this archetype.
You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, where I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Rathore. Mark is, wait for it, a mouthpiece for engineering sales. And I'm giggling because when you start to hear Mark, you'll realise that that's absolutely true. I don't think he's going to hold back at all today. Some strong opinions, but a damn fine chap to talk to that I am looking forward to, Mark. So, welcome.
Thanks. Great to be here. Great to be doing this. We've obviously had a couple of conversations already, Fred, where we've been marveling at the engineering mind and its prowess or possibly lack thereof when it comes to all things commercial related.
Well, he's off. He's off and running already. No, it is. I love working with engineers. You love working with engineers. You're a trained engineer.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So for my sins, I done chemical engineering, seemed like a lifetime ago back in Queen's University in Belfast. I actually came out of that degree then in a state of disappointment because I realized I'd done the wrong degree to get a job in the automotive industry. So immediately then had to start recontemplating my life and was very fortunate, actually got offered a job by Hariba automotive based in Northampton. So came over in 2013. So yeah, trained engineer academically. I guess the first 3 to 4 years of what I done, Fred, was very, very technical in its nature, very complex, going into the weeds of how things worked, mainly exhaust gas emission analyzers. And then part of that role, you know, every so often, maybe once or twice a week, you'd have to rock up at some customer site and have a conversation. But at that point, I had no idea really how to conduct conversations or have really like impactful interactions with people where you drew very useful, truthful information out of them very quickly. That all came a bit later. So, yes, I was actually very fortunate, just really fortunate to be mentored by a couple of people early days. Career one was Rick Spurgeon from Hariba Automotive. He retired about 7 or 8 years ago. Great guy, like very, very adept, very knowledgeable, great technical prowess. The other one was Les Hill, again at Hariba Automotive. He retired early. I'm still keeping in touch with him. Spoke to Les a few months ago. So yeah, just thought I'd drop in. It wasn't planned or anything. I just said, like, you got to actually credit the guys that helped you sort of, you know, start the journey. So yeah, that's how it started, really.
Yeah. And it's interesting. You've already kind of touched on something that I want to go into depth on, which is qualified engineers, smart people, they understand how things work. You know, they'll often get right down into the detail of it.
Yeah.
Particularly if it's the products and stuff they're selling. But what I've seen, when it comes to selling, they won't do the stuff that makes the difference. Even though we can say, this is how it works, it doesn't get applied. And for me, I want to know why, because it doesn't make any sense. If this is how an engine works, okay, we'll make the engine work like this. This is how selling works. No, I don't get it. What's going on?
So, I mean, I've got a theory. I've got a number of theories we've already talked about. So some of my theories on previous discussions. So my theory is this. You've got pure engineering, project work, in the stuff that we've done in the past, clients that work on, develop and build really cool, advanced, complicated and expensive powertrains and engines, for example. So, you've got that going on. That's their bread and butter. That's what they were effectively built to do. They studied an engineering related degree or something very applicable that allowed them to do that. Then you've got the whole sales piece. You've got how to talk to people, how to demonstrate, emotional empathy, how to actually have certainty in oneself. Now, my theory is actually really simple. And I don't know if anybody listening is going to be able to see what my hands are doing here, but they're two different circuits in the brain. That's what's going on. They're two different neural pathways, in my opinion. So one is, here's the archetype of an engineer, and here's the archetype of a business person, to make it really simple. Now, they're two different pathways, and we're going to talk about something a little bit later that I've called absorption latency. It all boils down to the fact that if you leave an engineer or anybody really who studied and lived and breathed and quite frankly pissed the world of engineering for any amount of time, if you leave them to do naturally what they'll do, they'll revert to type, which means they'll revert to this archetype. Yeah. The second bit, the thing that you and I have been doing over the last number of years, like training, coaching, mentoring, whatever you want to call it, like that's not a natural thing. It's a different set of neurons in the brains. So that's my theory, quite simply. You got it. Actually, what we're trying to do here is rewire the way people think. And actually, when I say that out loud, I'm talking to myself as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. So again, if I was to paraphrase, we're saying engineering stuff is fairly obvious. I mean, it doesn't mean it's simple, but it's obvious, it's logical. That equals that equals that equals that. Okay, and that'll happen. But in sales stuff, it's not always obvious. And sometimes it's a bit counterintuitive what you have to do to be successful.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, to impress somebody, you don't actually tell them all about yourself and how ace you are.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I've seen engineers, for example, fall into a trap. It's like, why don't we just go and tell them how bloody awesome we are, what great engineers and all these wonderful tools and because that won't work. Does not compute. No. And then that's where you talk about these kind of two different brain wirings, where it's from the engineering point of view. I worked for an engineering company, but I'm no way. I've got a degree in commerce and Spanish. But I'm not going to tell you how that bit works. But come to the sales piece, these are the things you need to do. If you're smart enough, you should be able to grasp this concept, but they don't get grasped.
Yeah.
That's the bit where I get confused, frustrated.
Totally get that. There's a few other things then to sort of garnish on top of what I've just said there about the brain wiring aspect. So a few other things I've come to realize over and relatively recently, Fred, like within the last 2.5 years, really, and I've been doing this properly for about 7 or 8. The other things that you gotta actually consider and put on the table is that non-engineering stuff. I think that's a really great sort of way you've used to just classify engineering stuff. Like that's the stuff they've been built for, they've been programmed for. That is often like, that's right in comfort zone. So that's relatable, very little unknowns. And quite often it's laced with big dopamine hits as well. Like if they get a breakthrough down in the test cell, or in one of the development paths and figure out that, I'm using a really stupid example here, that they can squeeze an extra 1 brake horsepower out of a 0.25 liter capacity engine in the face of regulation coming in. Like there's a pretty big dopamine hit going on there, right? So what's happening is that circuitry that we talked about before in this side, it's constantly being validated and confirmed. Now, there's another thing as well that I've recognized, and I recognized it only because I knew I had it myself, which is the engineering superego, right? So what the engineering superego basically looks like, and I'm giving you, and this is, and I believe I'm qualified to talk about this because I'd had it and still do have a little bit of it knocking around. this is somebody from probably the ages of 12, 13, 14, 15 through GCSE, A-level and university. They've always been academically top, easily top 5, 10% of the class. Take me as an example. All A's at GCSE, all A's at A-level. Then I go into medical school and I'm a complete flop. Yeah. So if you bear with me, you'll understand what I mean, because that story is quite relevant. You got from the ages of 12 to 19, you were constantly told anything that you did or anything that you touched turned to gold. You suddenly come out of that, you get slapped around the face really hard by reality for the first time in your life. You feel, yeah. Now, I'm not feel in a sort of, oh, we'll pick ourselves up and go tomorrow. Like feel in a sort of life trajectory altering way. Now, and I'm really thankful that that happened to me so early in my career, because it showed me two things. Number one, there was no way I was meant to ever be a fucking doctor. Like, you can just ask my wife. She knows more about medical stuff than I do. And I spent 2 years trying to do it, albeit it was, 12, 13 years ago, maybe a little more now, 15 years. And the second thing is it smashed my engineering ego to bits. It literally drove a truck through it at the age of 21, 22. Now, that left me in a place of like no real purpose, no real direction, effectively drifting around life for probably 2 years after that. But once I then picked myself up, got through, done chemical engineering, and then got offered the job at Hariba and started properly, like put some traction into things. What I then had a massive lack of, which went in my favor, was ego. Like, and I'm being like totally open and raw here. Most engineering managers, even the younger engineers that I deal with today, you can see there's a massive edge to the personality. And in my opinion, that edge is coming from the underlying engineer and superego. Like, let's be frank, this is why I've got a business doing what I do that earns money. It's because of their ego. It's made them work and operate in a certain way for so many years that ultimately it's taken a very painful event, like them losing their biggest client or the biggest account, or a management restructure or a buyout or something. The level of pain has had to go really high for them to turn around and say, yeah, we'd like to talk to you about doing things differently. Really what I'm doing is I'm just helping them think differently. So we're at work. Sorry, one last thing to finish it off. And I do realize I'm talking quite a lot here, so you can.
You're a guest. You're supposed to.
You can have to. I find that I get like not just good results, but tremendous outsized results with people that are able to recognize that that's at play, set it to one side, and make a commitment to change and have a capacity to change. Because here's the thing: if you could have a commitment and capacity to change, but see if that ego is still orbiting and in action around all of that, it's like having a handbrake yanked up. It's literally that's what's going on. So it's very much a psychology thing for it, actually, underneath it all. Now, this is my non-qualified sort of mouthpiece type opinion on it, but like that's truly what I believe is going on with a lot of these people.
You're putting into words stuff that I've seen, and actually a couple of things you've said there has given me aha moments already. Yeah. And I've been working in sales training for 24 years now. And the thing I wanted to come back to, I know she said so much good stuff, but he said something about the knowns and unknowns. And they don't like unknowns. And I'm thinking, well, in sales training, we're saying, well, you've got to find the stuff you don't know. Immediately, that's going right out your comfort zone. And then try and celebrate it as a good thing. It's like this complete opposite psychology. What? Finding I don't know something. And you're saying that's good. I'm like, okay, of course it's said you're going to do something about it. Yeah. No. Hurts. Yeah. And then what we'll do is we'll go and we'll like assume stuff. What?
Yeah.
I want to know stuff. Nah, just build a kind of a working hypothesis. No, it's got to be 100% correct. And then go and ask people questions to see what they reckon. We're like, bang, bang, bang. 3 things that is, for me, as pure sales, if you like, kind of day in, day out, that's what we want to do. Whoa, you are really pushing me on those because that's not how we want to do stuff. I want to be certain. I want to do things in a certain order. And now there's a process to those things, but that mindset to be able to do it, take the handbrake off is key, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I'm a big fan of analogies, especially using them to try and make, insights come to life and pop a little bit more. Like effectively what you and I are doing largely is, you're asking somebody that always wears their watch on their left hand to start wearing it on the right. If they always brush their teeth with their right hand, you're asking them to start brushing it with their left. But what we're asking them to do is we're asking them to sit in that uncomfortableness for a sustained period of time until they see a new result or outcome. Now, what happens because of the psychological thing and the brain wiring thing that I've talked about is unconsciously they'll put the watch back on the left hand, and 2 mornings in, they'll go back to using the right hand with a toothbrush, that type of thing. So this leads us into, another thing that I've recognized in the engineer and architect, which is something I've called absorption latency. And
I wasn't going to let you get away not saying that. I know you said it earlier. People have been waiting for this moment. So absorption latency. Yeah.
Absorption latency. And again, I believe I'm qualified to talk about this because I'm speaking to myself from prior experience. So what absorption latency is here's the thing. So use what you do as an example. So you teach, then you do integration and implementation, then you do another little bit of teaching, then you do more implementation. And it's a really cool way to do it because basically what you're doing is you're trying to bed new skills and behaviors in very deep in the shortest amount of time, right? So absorption latency shows up for an engineer in the following way. And we got to use an example here. So you got to think about, let's think about the demographic or who this person is. So I'm really glad, by the way, to see lots and lots of more females making their way into the industry. But let's be honest, the work that we've done over the last 10 years, it's usually blokes, somewhere between early 30s to late 40s-ish, right? Now, they all have amazing levels of competency in a specific area of what they do. It could be software, it could be calibration diagnostics on cars and vehicles. They could be, they could be whizzes when it comes to CAD and virtual environments, all this sort of stuff. So in that domain, like they're kingdom. Effectively, there's nobody better than them, and therefore, as a result of that, their confidence and certainty in those domains is off the charts. If we were to rank it out of 10, it'd probably be an 11. Yeah. Which is fantastic. Now, you're then asking them to sit in a room or some environment that is not their normal environment. So straight away, they're out of their comfort zone just by being in a meeting room for a day instead of an hour. You're then asking them to absorb new knowledge, new information. And some of them are going to actually be rejecting this new information as it comes at them because their engineered superego is so big, it's acting as a sheep. So they'll not even be taking all of it in at one time. They'll be taking little snippets of it in. So you're asking them to sit in that room for a half day, a day, whatever it is, take all this in. And then what you're doing is the next day you're asking them when they have the sales call or the discovery call or the client count call, whatever it is, you're asking them to then put into action some of the new information and some of the new skills. Now, because of the way their brains are wired, they're processing this new salesy stuff. Let's use that as a term. Processing it with the same CPU or the same processor that they do all their engineering stuff with. So they academically, logically, intellectually, they get it. There's no problem. They absolutely get what's going on. But here's the thing. Because they haven't practiced this like a muscle, they haven't built up the repetitions, their level of confidence and certainty in how to use it they might say that they have confidence and certainty. They might say, yeah, we're okay. We're about a 7 or an 8. By the way, 7's a danger number. Anybody says that. The reality is they're probably a 1 or a 2. So here's what happens. They go onto that call. They could have their little script or their notebook sat there. And this is what we covered with Fred. And yesterday, this is what Mark told us to say and do. And the client comes on and it's going really well for about 10 minutes. And then the client starts to talk about something probably related to money. And they literally just melt into a fucking puddle. Because what's happening is you've also got the psychological elements of limiting beliefs around money, around the value of things. All this stuff is creeping in. And what happens then, because their certainty is so low, any new skills, any new knowledge or logic that's been retained by this processor over here, it can't compute. It literally, it's like the computer freezes. So what happens then? Well, they don't just stop on the call and not say anything and not do anything. They simply just revert to type. Literally, and it happens in a split second. I've seen it happen. I've seen people doing really well on sales calls. Somebody says one thing about how much is it? Why should we work with you? They don't have the skill to understand really what's going on and they just melt. And literally what happens then is a tails starts to happen. So by understanding that this is going on with people, what I've come to understand is you've actually got to get in there with them, roll your sleeves up and be on the call with them and show them when they think it's gone sort of effectively tits up. You got to just slow everything down and say, look, do you know what? That's a great question that you just asked. Why should you work with us? There's a ton of things that we could literally just vomit out and tell you now, but I'd rather just send you over a couple of slides or a PDF we've got. Can I ask you a question actually back in return that I think will serve you even better? Why do you think you should work with us? Because there's 4 or 5 other people out here in the industry like doing, let's be honest, similar things. Like what's standing out about us? You've taken an hour out to speak to us. What do you think? And then they're literally either beside you in person or remotely on that call. And again, they're struggling to compute and understand what's going on because they're still in this tailspin from not being able to answer the question. But here's the thing, you basically put the arm around them, you bring them in and they do it again tomorrow. They do it again the day after that. They do it again the week after that. And it's like going to the gym, the muscle and the reps slowly but surely start to develop. But here's the kicker that not a lot of these engineering people understand, right? As smart and as intelligent as they are, learning this salesy stuff that you and I have been trying to get good at for the last 10 and 20 respective years, it's not linear. None of it's fucking linear. It's logarithmic. So you could be down very low and then one day you have a breakthrough and you go up here because they look at it all in a linear fashion. So you've got all this stuff going on. And even from just what I've said the last 5 minutes, there's lots of stuff going on in their heads, isn't
there? Again, so much. And then again, the example, I'm so pleased you picked the example, that particular one, because you've illustrated something which it's counterintuitive. Somebody's asked you a question, well, you give them an answer. And the answer I could give them could show you how brilliant I am. But we know that doesn't really work, which is why the training is that when you're faced with that, you actually do this. Isn't an obvious thing to do. But that's because that works and that's been modeled and we know that and we can. And the funny thing is when you train people in all this stuff, you think it's going really well. I'm now casting back to training I've done because I'll be, oh, Fred, so where does that come from? What psychology is this? Oh, it's this, it's this. Oh, partnering skills. What are this? Oh, yeah, it's validated and verified. Guy called Steve Dent, Minnesota, blah, blah, blah. And it's great. And as a trader, it's lovely because you get to show off how clever you are. But you're giving all this stuff. You're thinking, these guys are absolutely getting this. They're absorbing it super quick. Yeah. But what you're saying, no, Fred, that's like, it's not actually gone in. It's sort of surface level. They've tested the robustness of some of the stuff behind it, but it's not actually gone in. And so maybe keeping it simpler and just drilling it and helping it to be implemented and perfected. That's when your learning curve is going to steepen and get better.
Absolutely. And I guess, so in summary, like that absorption latency concept it's really critical to understand that that's at play, because if you don't do anything to support them and help them through that period of latency, the risk of them reverting to type is in my opinion, it's through the roof. And the more they revert to type, you got to remember, the more they revert to type, the more they're going to turn around and say you're training shit. That's the reality of what's going on. Or your frame, in my case, oh, your sales process is crap. Your pipeline stuff is crap. None of this works. Well, yeah, it doesn't work because you've not realized that you're in a period of absorption where you need to be putting the reps in daily and not just trying it once. And when it doesn't work or you feel fearful or anxious, saying that it's the fault of the trainer or the framework. That's what's going on. So really, like, this all comes down to trying to more deeply understand how people think. And somebody said, another podcast I was listening to a few days ago summed this up really nicely. And the nature of this podcast was actually about like overcoming limiting beliefs and trying to create opportunity for personal development in your life. And the speaker said, most people don't actually understand how they think. Like, and if you think about that for a moment, it's quite a powerful thing. Cause like, to say it again, most people don't understand how they think. And as he was saying that was resonating with me. Like, and I will openly tell you, I still don't understand fully how I think, but now because he's created that awareness, I'm now looking to challenge how I think. But you got to remember, like, we've invested a ton of time, a ton of money, a ton of energy in developing these skills that we have that they're now saleable, that make a really big impact in businesses. People that we're serving in those businesses, most times, and I could be wrong, but from my observation, most times they haven't done that work. So they don't know how they think, and therefore engineering superego, absorption, latency, like fear and anxiety, when they're put in a position to talk about money and why somebody should do business. All this stuff it's like the perfect storm for some of these people. But really, like, we're leading on to another quite an amusing, really, in a way, point, which is how have these people ended up in positions where they're responsible for sales and business development? I'll maybe ask you a question. What are your thoughts on that? Because it's in a way they're well equipped in many ways, but completely ill-equipped in other ways.
I would hazard the guess, well, it's kind of educated guess, it's an assumption, I'm comfortable with them, that it's because they've sold stuff. Right. But they're using a different definition of sold than you or I might do. In other words, there's been a time where a customer has needed some expert information and they've been the one who's the expert. They've been rolled out for the customer. They've delivered that information the customer needs. Customer says, oh, fantastic. That is exactly right. You guys, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so this person gets rolled out again because they're good with customers. Why? Because the customers ask for stuff and they know the answers to, and it repeats and repeats and repeats. So they get this label of being good at sales. But from that kind of non-salesy, because we're using that word now, point of view, then suddenly they might get pushed into a full-on sales role and they've got to use these other skills and techniques and stuff we talk about. They just haven't got them. They just don't know them. And it's like, but what happened to me last time? Well, I went and talked to people about this stuff. They tried to do that. And that's where it starts to fail. And then that's when it starts to get into like panic mode. And then that's when the wheels start to come off and they don't know why. What worked before isn't working. You know, because it's a different situation completely. That technical expertise conversation had been set up by a salesy conversation, but now that thing happening, and that's where things are going wrong.
And the way you framed that is really good. It's painted a really vivid picture in my mind, because picture how painful this is for somebody in that position, right? Because they've sold some stuff. And legitimately so, and it could be like some of them could be multi-7-figure contracts, yeah. Really, like, with love and respect to them, the first sale was they processed an order. It wasn't selling; they just processed an order. Now the pain kicks in when they've been doing it for a number of years. They then get promoted up to, oh, well, you're head of sales. You need to go and help us build business, get into adjacent market with new clients. They then go and do what they've always been doing, which has been working, and the marketplace start rejecting it. Imagine the pain and the internal tension going on in their head, because the engineer and superego won't allow them to acknowledge that things have to be done differently. It simply won't allow them. So what you end up hearing, and I still hear this to this day, oh, well, like, yeah, the client doesn't have a clue what they're talking about. We went to speak to them, they don't have a clue. Like, they absolutely need our help, but they didn't really seem to want to move forward. They just have a clue what to do. They're idiots, quite frankly. Oh, nobody's buying, there's a recession coming in, the market start. All these types of things, they're all symptoms of an engineer and superego at play, in my opinion. I actually look out for these because the more of these I hear, the more it can actually make an impact, not by training, coaching, and mentor them, but actually by going and doing some sales on their behalf and improving the engineer and superego role. So like a lot of what we do, and you will be doing this as well with the clients that you serve, is we're actually softly, professionally undermining lots of their beliefs.
Yeah.
And I actually tell them that, like, in my workshops, which is sort of the second stage of starting to do some business with me, like in the open, and I stand up and say, look, at points today, you're actually going to want to punch me. Like, you got to think that I am saying stuff just to wind you up and annoy you. But really what I'm doing is I'm undermining your belief system, because until we can do that, we can't make real progress. And people are usually cool with that when you frame it like that, because then they know if they're feeling a little bit of tension and frustration, it's actually a good thing. But you generally always, you still get one in the room that just won't give in. The ego is just locked in so deeply. It's quite funny sometimes. You
Yeah.
bring up the subject of conversion rates, for example. Yeah, Mark, we're fine. We don't need your help on conversion rates. We convert about 60 or 70%. So we don't have a problem there. And I'm like, all right then. So talk me through, how have you got up to such a high conversion rate, given the industry standards about 20 to 25? You're doing sort of three and a half times. That's amazing. Talk me through how you've got that one. Oh, well, like we know exactly what the customers want, what they need. And like, we're just there for them when they pick up the phone and ask us, to help. And actually what you find is they measure conversion rates wrong as well. They'll have a huge wheel account, and we'll get on to the bell curves in a few minutes. They'll have a what I call a wheel account that it gives them maybe between 60 and 80% of their annual revenue. But that won't be just one order. It'll be split into 10, 15, 20 orders. So they'll measure the conversion rates of that, the order process rates. There's nothing to do with sales there. Like, that's their account to lose, quite frankly, in a lot of instances. And then you go even further. Like, if I'm feeling in a particularly nasty mood, or the egos are really big in that room, the best way to stress test the conversion rate numbers, which, by the way, I've never come across a business that underestimates its conversion. I don't know about you, but I've never come across one that underestimates its always overestimate.
Yeah. Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can ask them to walk you through the last 3 to 4 opportunities that they came across. And that will maybe be over a time period of the last month, or maybe the last 3 months. And very quickly, those that are saying that they've got 60 or 70% conversion rate, by the time they've walked you back to the 3rd or 4th opportunity in that they haven't closed, then you stop them and say, hold on. So if you close 66%, let's call it 67, so 2 out of every 3, you've just told me that the last 3 opportunities that you've talked to didn't close. So how could you have a 67% conversion rate? And that's when the penny drops, because usually the whole room goes silent. Some of them will try and talk their way out of it, because the engineer ego is programmed just really to talk its way out of everything. But some will just go deadly silent and then say, yeah, do you know what? We need to look at these numbers again. Or, yeah, do you know what? It doesn't seem right, does it? And a really easy way I start a lot of conversations, as you can tell, by moving towards conversion rate, because conversion rate for me in a sales pipeline is like a dating point. I don't know if you know, like, think of a CNC machine. I had the pleasure of working in an aerospace factory for about 7 months before I came to England. And amazing machines, like 5 axes, can make these parts for aircraft. Before I can run any program through that and effectively waste 2 hours of electricity, like high pressure fluids, and solely to conduct the machine's time. Little thing has to come down in the machine. It's a little like dot, and it touches the metal as it's been fixed and creates a datum point. Once it's satisfied, it's checked a couple of times. Yep, we're fine. Datum point's locked in. Then you run your program so the part's not scrapped. And for me, that's the same as understanding your conversion rates in the sales pipe. It really is. Let's be honest, somebody converting at 70%, legitimately converting at 70%, like they don't fucking make me in the room. Like that's the reality. Because
we want to run the podcast. We want to know what they're doing.
Absolutely, want to know what they're doing.
And I wonder if they'll say it's a great product, but when we go into it, we probably find that actually what they're doing is selling it well. And somehow they've stumbled, or somehow they might have learned to, or they're using some of the practices in selling to get to the point where they can talk about their great product. I'd love to know.
Quite possibly. And there's so many other variables at play, Fred. So like, here's a quite relevant example of one where you wouldn't even have to be able to sell anything. You would just have to exist and be able to process orders. So at the minute, in Europe, to my knowledge, and it could be global, but to my knowledge in Europe, the amount of, let's say, OEMs and tier ones in the automotive supply chain that need to test sales of batteries for EV development and adoption, that level of demand for the testing services far outstrips the capacity in the market to supply it. So here's the thing, as long as you're not like an absolute idiot and you are able to run your battery cell cyclers and all that stuff, all you need to do is put your hand up and say, we can do it over here. Here's the price and here's when we can store it. That's not selling as you and I know it. That's not, but that could well get you a 70% conversion rate over a period of 6 months, 9 months, maybe a year, until the additional capacity in the marketplace comes online. So those are the other types of variables at play. But again, that leads us into like how important is R&D and market research before you start to do anything related to sales. Like know your conversion rates, know what's happened in your business the last 3 to 4 years, learn from the good and the bad, and then create a type of market plan. And again, like, don't get me started on fucking sales planning. Don't get me started on sales strategy.
It's just my job to our podcaster.
All of these.
So I'm just aware, no, there is so much good stuff here. And I know you want to talk about bell curve as well. How about, so I think you've given people a lot of food for thought already. The engineering superego is doing one at the moment. People's brains are flipping. Yeah. I want to give people time for this to kind of to sink in and to absorb, to sort of, to absorb. Absolutely, that latency thing. So can you come back in 6 months? No. How about we record another episode where we will go into those elements that we've just got you up and running?
Absolutely. How about that? Would love to do that. Yeah, I've got a few questions for you on the next one we can do as well.
Oh, all right. Okay, go on. At least I warned on that one. So look, let's because I know you've got an eye on the clock. So let's kind of, I don't know, quite a half time on this, or sort of draw an end to this particular one. Where can people get in touch with you? Because I'm pretty sure that they're hearing things and going, oh, hang on a minute, I think I need to speak to this guy. Yeah, my id says, my ego's at not. Where do they get in touch? Best way?
What a great question. So best way to get in touch with me is through my LinkedIn handle, really. So just go and search Mark Rathore, Engineering Collaborations, the natural strategic way for engineers and manufacturers to deliver lasting value for their customers. That's my tagline. LinkedIn handle is the best way. Phone number and email is on there. Happy, by the way, contrary to what a lot of gurus tell you, like I'm happy to talk to people, like with no expectation that we're going to do business at the back end. Really happy to talk to them for up to an hour, even 90 minutes. All I ask is that they don't cancel 3 minutes before the call and then ghost. But that's sort of the world that we live in. That does happen time to time, doesn't it?
It's a bit sad. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll pop that into the show notes so people can just find that, click on straight away. Mention that they've heard you talking on this Sales Today podcast. So again, that can get you up and running. You can get into the bits of juicy stuff faster. But Mark, brilliant. I say I've had a couple of aha moments that I've been scribbling stuff down that I'm going to talk to you off air about, and perhaps in the next one.
What was your biggest aha moment from the first half? Yeah, I'm just curious.
It's the unknowns. It's the amount of discomfort that engineers would feel with the unknowns. When I'm perhaps talking to more salespeople, because I work outside the sector as well. And they're like, yeah, cool. Yeah, we'll map it and we'll have all these red flags, bits we don't know, and we'll go and find them out. Yeah, happy days. The amount of pain that might cause, the fear, the anxiety, plus the fact you got to go into questions, plus you got to make these assumptions. It's like, whoa, you're laying a lot on us here. And how we manage that ego, well, that's a real biggie for me. So thank you.
But just to touch on that for a few seconds more. So if you think about what some of these guys are doing, though, they are actually living in a world of uncertainty because they're trying to claw back the last little bit of performance, longevity, all that sort of stuff. But I'm talking through the context of like what I'm used to, which is engines, powertrains, all that sort of stuff. They're actually living in a world of uncertainty. But back to the way the brain was wired, they've got that processor, that engineering stuff processor allows them to live in that space quite comfortably. So we're coming along asking them to install another processor in the brain. And that's the tricky bit, because there's an absorption latency, not just on knowledge and the insight, but on actually how do they process it and use it. Does that make sense? You think about it as building a PC. I'm not one of these people, but loads of people have a hobby with build PCs. Like, think about what's going on there and the components that are going in. If you're building a massive, really powerful gaming PC and you don't put in 2 graphics cards, only one, it might fall over and freeze and crash in certain games where the frame rate's too high. That's the sort of stuff that I think is going on in people's brains.
But it's stuff that we can do something about, is the important thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome, mate. Awesome. Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the Collaborative Selling Scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.